Alright, so over this past weekend, the Vanguard community was in a bit of a tizzy over this card you see here, Polyphonic Overdrive Artisaria. So, in the latest episode of the anime, as of this recording, it was revealed that this deck is capable of locking! And not like the Messiah lock, where it just goes away at the end of the turn and you get your circle back. This is proper, full on, you cannot use that zone anymore locking. And so, of course, everybody started freaking out. Some people started dooming about the prospect of lock in standard. Other people started looking at the meta and seeing what could and couldn't play around it. It was a bit crazy, and me personally wanted to wait until we actually knew what all of the cards were capable of doing so we could analyze things calmly. So let's do that, shall we? So, first things first, we have the grade 0, Heap Up Octavia Pruta. And the reason that's important is because both of the ride line units more or less do the same thing. So when they ride on top of the previous member of the line, you can reveal a grade 3 with Artisaria, search your deck for a sound system, reveal it, put it into your hand, and shuffle. So grade 2 is the same thing when you ride on top of the grade 1. Uh, Artisaria herself has the ability that during your turn, if your order zone has two or more sound systems, this unit gets critical +1. And then it has an act ability. You can Energy Blast 2, take a sound system card from your hand or drop zone, put it into the order zone, and if you put it from your hand, draw a card. And then on attack, you can Counterblast 1, call a Shadow Army token for each sound system in your order zone, and all of your front row units get power +5,000 for every 2 sound systems that you have. So basically, going with the Link Joker aesthetic, it plays a kind of Brant Gate style deck where you're searching out these sound system set orders, putting them into your order zone, and kind of getting benefits off of them. And so already we have a pretty good start because the ride line just searches out your sound systems for free. You don't have to worry too much about trying to find them or potentially bricking. It lets you deck thin 2 cards, and then because Artisaria can play it from the drop zone, it's also free ride fodder. Pretty good. In addition to those, we also have all of the new rear guards. So we have Trailing Notes Reverberera, so during your turn, if your order zone has a sound system, it gets power +5,000. And at the end of the battle that it boosted, if you have a sound system, put it into your soul. Choose one of your rear guards and return it to your hand. So because Artisaria is going to be calling Shadow Army tokens, bouncing things back to your hand kind of clears up the circles for you so you can make the tokens without minusing yourself. This kind of acts as like an in-archetype Yuika for you, which you can also just play actual Yuika. Maybe you do both, so you have a bit of consistency of bouncing cards. Next up, we have Devilish Flanger Lufer. So when it's placed on rearguard circle or put onto the guard circle, if you have a sound system, it gets power and shield +5,000. And then when it's returned to your hand from the rearguard circle or retired from rearguard circle, so either bouncing it back with something like Reverbera, or if you just call over it with a Shadow Army token, you can counterblast 1 and draw a card. And then finally, we have Sing to the Sky Rakroea. God, I hate these Vanguard names. When this unit attacks, it gets 5k for each sound system in your order zone, so the longer the game goes on, the more this card is going to be able to scale up. And then when it's returned to your hand from the rearguard circle, or retired from the rearguard circle, if you have Artisaria, you can Soul Blast 1, give one of your units power +5,000. So we can see that with the sound system set up, all of your cards at least scale up to an additional 5,000, with the grade 3 scaling up infinitely for as many sound systems as you're playing. So you should be able to make like pretty good numbers. Then you can like bounce things back to the hand when you call your tokens for Artisaria so that you're not minusing yourself. It's a pretty decent aggressive gameplay loop. But we still have yet to see what the sound systems themselves are capable of doing, so let's get into those. First up, we have Shout in Shadow. So it has a continuous effect that it cannot be played and can only be put into the order zone by the ability of Artisaria. And when it's put into the order zone, you can draw a card and call a Shadow Army token to Rearguard Circle. So this is a pretty good card. It is effectively a +2. Because you can play it from the drop zone, you don't necessarily have to commit anything from your hand, and even if you do, Artisaria just cycles it for another draw. And then its own ability lets you draw a card and create a Shadow Army token, so it's kind of a 2 for 1. Pretty good. Alongside all of our other cards here that all get power plus 5,000, you are at minimum probably going to be making a 28k column without Persona riding, which pretty good. And then, of course, we have Mega Romania, the thing that drove the community into a frenzy over this weekend. So, same as Shout and Shadow, it can't be played and can't be put into the order zone other than by Artisaria. And when it's put into the order zone, if your opponent's Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, choose one of your opponent's rear guards and lock it. So, this card is bad. It's kinda bad. So, the thing with their sound system orders is they're both very limited. Because they can't be played normally and can only be put into the order zone by Artisaria, you can only use one per turn. So already, you're kinda having to choose between a card that gives you a lot of advantage, being both a draw and board building, or locking your opponent's card, which is kind of a nebulous form of advantage. It really kind of depends on what kind of deck your opponent is playing and what they actually give you to lock. On top of that, it's locked to your opponent being grade 3 or greater, which means you can't use it to punish like an early rush, and your opponent is going to have at least one turn to do like their full maximum combo before you actually get to start locking them down. On top of that, it turns out a lot of the meta decks just don't care about the lock either. Some of them, while they give you things to lock, can continue to make an adequate combo through it. So, an example of this is like Levy Dross. While you can clear out some of your rear guards with like Charmnet, most likely you're still going to have one or two things left on the board to get locked by Mega Romania. And because Levy Dross kind of leverages back row attacks as his way of multi attacking, like locking out one of the circles probably is taking away one of their attacks. But even if you do that, like Charmnet got rid of herself, so next turn it's just gonna come back, and she is the strongest rear guard in terms of just raw numbers. And like still gonna be making 4 attacks that are all like 30k probably with the Infinity Eyes. And then on top of that, if Levi-Dross hasn't used his divine skill yet, then they can also swing a big huge Vanguard with a crit. So it just kinda doesn't care. And then, of course, we have things like Hari and Night Rose that can just naturally clear out their own boards and therefore not give you anything to lock at all. Honestly, like the more I think about it, the more Mega Romania kind of feels like bait. Like the concept of locking in standard sounds very scary, but it turns out a lot of things can play through it, and even the things that don't, is it really that bad? Because think about where the current power level of standard actually is, right? Like so many decks, including this one, just casually get so much power that they're going to be demanding like 2, 3 card guards with a single attack. So even if you lock out one of their columns and put them down to 2 or 3 attacks in one turn, like they're still going to be capable of pressuring you for a decent amount of cards, and you're only going to get maybe one draw off of Lufer because the opportunity cost of using Megaromania is giving up the additional plussing from Shout and Shadow. So like it really doesn't feel that great, to be honest. So, after all of this was revealed, I think a lot of people have kind of gone in the complete opposite direction where they now think Artisaria is just a completely terrible deck. You know, they see that like the deck needs 2 sound systems to be active and Mega Romania can't lock anything until like turn 4 most likely. So, The deck's not that great, but honestly, I don't think that's completely true either. Like with most things, there's a bit of nuance here. So, at minimum, the ride line is very good, being able to just deck thin 2 and give you free ride fodder. It means you can mill your early hands for like really aggressive plays. The deck synergizes pretty well with like Francette because you're wanting to bounce cards to your hand anyways to clear up space for your Shadow Army tokens. Like probably you can also play Yuika. The deck also doesn't really use souls, so you can use the new like Pride Cyclers that give you the 10k shield. Like, I think this deck is still going to perform perfectly fine. It seems to have, like, pretty good early aggression available to it, just because of how powerful lyrical generics are. And, like, your turn 3 play, while you're not able to make 5 attacks, you are probably making a 28k column with all of your big plus 5k rear guards. And then you're still making 4 attacks, so it's gonna be like, you attack with one thing, boosted or unboosted, it kinda depends, for like 15k probably. Then you can make like a new Shadow Army token, attack with it boosted, that's 28. Any of your in archetype cards together also make 28. It's not terrible. And then, of course, from turn 5 onwards, you're going to be making 2 Shadow Armies. You're going to get the 5k from having 2 sound systems. So, alongside Persona Ride, those are going to be 30k. Your Vanguard is going to have a critical. Like, all of that is pretty strong. I don't think that Artisaria is going to be like a big meta changing deck. If I was going to make that prediction for set 7, I would probably say that the new buff Sagra is the thing to make the impact. But I do think this is going to be like a decent tier 2 option, something along the lines of like Licia Fail. And of course, because Suzune, the character who plays Artisaria in the anime, looks to be a pretty major character, I have to imagine that over the course of the next seasons that this deck is just going to get more support that improves it further. So, all in all, I think Artisaria is really interesting. So, as of right now, I think Megaromania locking your opponent's cards is not the best thing you could be doing. Really, the most interesting about it is the psychological pressure that it puts on your opponent. Like, especially if they're playing a deck that can dodge the lock, it is going to force them to kind of change their combo lines and probably give you a bit of breathing room. Like, Reziel probably can't call Gabuelius for fear of you locking it. Same with like Varga with Shura, so it does give you a little bit of advantage, even if in practice you may very well never actually activate this card. That is going to be it for this video. I hope you enjoyed this little discussion of Artisaria. What do you think about her gameplay? Do you think that lock is going to ruin standard? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching, everybody. Bye bye.